Northern Nevada, 1984. An expanse of high desert plains under an endless sky. The locals called Highway 50 the loneliest road in America. It was a fitting name. Stretching through miles of arid nothingness, the road was a conduit for travelers desperate to get from one place to another without lingering too long in between. Few people stopped unless they had to, and even fewer dared venture onto the highway at night. For decades, there had been whispers of a phantom semi-truck that prowled this lonely stretch of asphalt, a ghostly rig that materialized from the shadows, its engine rumbling like a thunderstorm. Truckers shared stories in hushed tones over coffee in desolate diners, each claiming to know someone who had encountered the spectral vehicle. Some said it was a manifestation of the highway's isolation, a warning to those who dared challenge its solitude. Others swore it was the ghost of a long-dead driver seeking revenge. Whatever it was, the stories all ended the same way: the phantom truck would appear, tailgating its victims with blinding headlights before running them off the road, leaving no trace of itself behind. It was just past midnight when Mike Hastings tightened his grip on the wheel of his Ford Mustang. He was a traveling salesman, and his route often took him across Nevada's barren highways. The desert night pressed in on all sides, his high beams the only source of light as he sped through the void. The radio crackled faintly, fading in and out as he drove farther from civilization. Mike was no stranger to Highway 50, but tonight felt different. The air was heavier, the darkness deeper. He glanced at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see something emerge from the gloom, but the road behind him was empty. The first sign came as a low rumble, so faint at first that he thought it was the wind. But it grew louder, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. Mike's pulse quickened. He checked the mirror again, and this time, he saw them: headlights. They were distant at first, twin pinpricks of light on the horizon. But they were moving fast, impossibly fast, closing the gap between them in seconds. Mike squinted, trying to make out the vehicle. It was massive, its outline barely visible in the glow of its headlights. A semi-truck. Mike relaxed slightly. Just another trucker trying to make up time, he thought. He flipped on his blinker and shifted into the right lane to let the rig pass. But the truck didn't pass. It loomed closer, its headlights blazing brighter, almost blinding in Mike's mirrors. The rumble of its engine grew deafening, and Mike's Mustang shook as if caught in the wake of a storm. "What the hell?" Mike muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. The truck edged even closer, its grille now filling Mike's rearview mirror. Panic set in. He floored the gas pedal, the Mustang's engine whining in protest. The speedometer climbed past 80, then 90, but the truck stayed with him, relentless. "Pass me, damn it!" Mike shouted, his voice cracking. But the truck didn't pass. It stayed right on his bumper, its horn blaring, a long, mournful wail that seemed to pierce the night. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the truck veered off into the desert, its headlights vanishing into the darkness. Mike slammed on the brakes, his heart pounding as he skidded to a stop on the side of the road. He sat there for several minutes, his hands trembling on the wheel. When he finally worked up the courage to step out of the car, he scanned the desert, but there was no sign of the truck. No tire tracks. No sound. Nothing but the eerie stillness of the night. At a diner in Ely the next morning, Mike recounted his experience to the waitress, a middle-aged woman with a name tag that read Flo. Her eyes narrowed as she listened, her lips tightening into a thin line. "You saw the phantom rig," she said matter-of-factly, pouring him another cup of coffee. "The what?" "The phantom rig," she repeated. "Been haunting this stretch of highway for years. Shows up out of nowhere, scares the hell out of people, then disappears just as quick." Mike laughed nervously. "You can't be serious." Flo shrugged. "Believe what you want. But you're not the first to see it, and you won't be the last." An older man at the counter chimed in. "Back in '78, my buddy Earl swore he got chased by that thing. Said it drove him off the road, damn near killed him. Wrecked his truck, but the cops never found another vehicle." "Maybe it's just some psycho trucker," Mike suggested. "Maybe," Flo said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe that for a second. 2 nights later, Mike found himself back on Highway 50, this time heading west toward Fallon. He couldn't shake the memory of the truck or the way it had vanished without a trace. Part of him wanted to believe it had been a hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by fatigue. But the unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. The road stretched ahead, an endless ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desert. The Mustang's headlights illuminated the faded yellow lines, the occasional tumbleweed skittering across his path. Then he heard it again. The rumble. Mike's knuckles turned white as he gripped the wheel, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The headlights were back, appearing out of nowhere, growing brighter with each passing second. Not again, he muttered. He accelerated, but the truck matched his speed, its headlights unwavering. This time, Mike didn't wait for it to close the gap. He yanked the wheel to the right, skidding onto a gravel turnout. The truck barreled past him, its horn blaring a deafening note that sent chills down his spine. For a brief moment, he caught a glimpse of it, a massive black rig with chrome trim that gleamed like polished bone in the moonlight. But there was something wrong with it, something that made Mike's blood run cold. The cab was empty. No driver. No one at the wheel. The truck disappeared over a rise, its taillights fading into the darkness. Mike sat frozen, his heart hammering in his chest. He wanted to turn back, to head in the opposite direction and leave this cursed highway behind. But something compelled him to keep going. Mike followed the road for another 20 miles, his hands shaking as he scanned the horizon for any sign of the truck. The desert seemed to close in around him, the once open expanse now oppressive and claustrophobic. Then, without warning, the truck reappeared. It came out of nowhere, its headlights flaring to life in his rearview mirror. This time, there was no time to react. The truck surged forward, ramming the back of the Mustang with a bone-jarring impact. Mike screamed, the steering wheel jerking wildly as he fought to keep the car on the road. The truck rammed him again, harder this time, sending the Mustang skidding into the oncoming lane. Mike wrenched the wheel to the right, the tires screeching as he careened back onto the shoulder. "Leave me alone," he shouted, his voice cracking. But the truck didn't stop. It loomed closer, its grille inches from the Mustang's bumper. Desperate, Mike veered onto a dirt road that branched off from the highway, the Mustang bouncing violently as it tore across the uneven terrain. He glanced in the mirror, expecting to see the truck following him, but it was gone. He skidded to a stop, his chest heaving as he gasped for air. The desert was silent again, the only sound the faint ticking of the Mustang's cooling engine. But the silence didn't last. A low, guttural growl rose from the darkness, followed by the blinding glare of headlights. The truck emerged from the shadows, its engine roaring like a beast unleashed. Mike screamed as it charged toward him, its horn blaring. The Mustang's engine roared as Mike floored the gas, the car lurching forward. The dirt road twisted and turned, the headlights casting erratic beams across the landscape. Behind him, the truck followed, its headlights a relentless presence in his rearview mirror. Mike swerved around a sharp curve, the Mustang's tires kicking up clouds of dust, but the truck didn't falter. It was toying with him, he realized. No matter how fast he drove, no matter how many turns he took, the truck was always there, an inescapable shadow. The dirt road ended abruptly, merging back onto Highway 50. Mike swerved onto the asphalt, his heart sinking as he realized where he was. The highway stretched ahead, straight and featureless, with no sign of civilization in sight. The truck's horn blared, a sound so loud it felt like it was coming from inside his own skull. Mike screamed, the Mustang's engine straining as he pushed it to its limits. The speedometer climbed past 100, but the truck stayed with him, its headlights searing into his mirrors. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the truck was gone. Mike skidded to a stop in the middle of the road, his chest heaving as he struggled to catch his breath. He sat there for what felt like hours, the silence of the desert pressing down on him. When he finally worked up the courage to step out of the car, he looked around, but there was no sign of the truck. No tire tracks. No headlights in the distance. Nothing. Mike never spoke of what happened that night. He left Nevada soon after, abandoning his sales route and taking a desk job in California. But the memory of the phantom rig stayed with him, haunting his dreams. And on the desolate highways of northern Nevada, the stories continued. Truckers whispered of the ghostly semi that roamed the night, its engine rumbling like distant thunder. Some claimed it was the spirit of a long-dead driver seeking revenge for a fatal wreck. Others believed it was the highway itself, a manifestation of the loneliness and desolation that defined the region. But no one knew for sure. All they knew was that the phantom rig was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And on Highway 50, the loneliest road in America, the darkness never slept.